Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Jeffrey Chan. This year marks 80 years since the end of World War II, the deadliest war in history. Its conclusion in Asia redrew the continent's borders and left many people with conflicting identities and loyalties. In Taiwan, a former colony of Japan, many people who once worked with the empire found themselves governed by those who had fought against it. Today, to discuss the legacy of World War II in Taiwan, we're joined by Lau Kek Huat, the director of the award-winning documentary From Island to Island, which tells the stories of Taiwanese soldiers and those affected by the war. Director Lau, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
First, can you tell us a bit more about the documentary and what aspects did you focus on?
Because Taiwan was one of the Japan Empire colonies at that time, so Taiwan was directly involved in the war when Japan launched the war. So the films From Island to Island, these films actually tackle and trying to exploit the experience of Taiwanese soldiers and also civilians when they were overseas all over the Southeast Asia, mainly Southeast Asia during the war. Basically, if you look at the research and study about most of the Taiwanese soldiers nowadays, most of them will emphasize on how suffering they are, on the victimhood they have been experienced. But my documentary trying to explore also, before we becoming victims, we are also part of the perpetrator who launched the war and conquered Southeast Asia.
Can you tell us a bit more about Taiwan, how it fit into the World War II narrative?
As we have said just now, Taiwan is not only as a part of the colony, in fact, it's a very important base for Japan Empire to go southward, which means in the modernization, the successful modernization of Taiwan actually encouraged Japan, has more confidence. Since we have been able to conquer Taiwan, since we have been able to let the people want to be Japanese army, want to be Japan army, so they are more confident, say we are able to go Southeast Asia. This is why they launched the whole Southeast Asia war. And this is using Taiwan as a base. They are confident they can go to the Southeast Asia and conquer, not only to conquer, but also to manage, which means to manage, you need people who can speak the local language. And because Taiwanese, they speak Taiwanese language, which is similar to Hokkien in Southeast Asia. So as a mindset of the army, they need people to go for the war. After the war, they need people to run business there, to run for the newsroom over there. They need people to run the administration. And by the resources they have and the knowledge they accumulated in Taiwan, making them, we are ready to go to the Southeast Asia and conquer.
And this is all part of the Great East Asia co-prosperity sphere?
Yes, correct. And this is why we can see, if we look at the war crime criminal record, a lot of the Taiwanese make use during the situation when they need translation. When you come to massacre, you need to question people. You need to spot out who are the ones to be killed from the natives, who are the ones to be spared. All those kind of location, situation, Taiwanese soldiers would make use because of the language proficiency. Not only the soldiers, even the Taiwanese who stay in Southeast Asia during that time, although they are not soldiers, they are being called by the army. When army came, they are being called by the army because of their language proficiency. They were recruited by the army on the spot to do their duties.
What got you interested in World War II, and specifically from Taiwan's point of view?
Actually, in the beginning, the film is planned for just 90 minutes instead of 290 minutes, which is the current length. I read one of the theses by Professor Mike Lanshichi, and his thesis is about all those overseas Taiwanese. Before the war, they will reside and live in Southeast Asia, doing business, living in Southeast Asia. But during the war, because they were treated as, their citizenship is treated as Japanese. Although they are Taiwanese, because they are colonized by Japan, so they are treated as Japanese. And they were all interned and sent to the internment camp in Australia and also India. So in the beginning, I interviewed this group of people. I realized that this group of elder peoples, and I found them and I tried to interview them. That is how I start the project. But by the meantime, I also doing research how does the Taiwan involve in the World War II? As a Malaysian, I growing up in Malaysia, although we don't really read a lot from the history textbook, but we do hear from our ancestors, mean grandparents, how suffering we are when Japan army come and attack Singapore and Malaysia. And they have done a lot of inhumans act and violence. So, but at that time, I don't really, yet I have able to relate Taiwanese soldiers with all this act of violence. But doing more research, I realized they are there. I mean, directly or indirectly involved. And this is why I expand the project and making it from 90 minutes to 2.5 hours, and then in the end it becomes 5 hours because the topic is too many to cover.
So how different was the 5-hour version from the shorter version you originally planned?
Yes, actually before, I do have a 2.5 hour version of it. I did, and then I complete a 2.5 hour versions. And I try to show this to some of my teammates, my colleagues who are young Taiwanese. And then I'm doing the testing screening. After I show the film to them, I getting a feedback is quite frustrated. Frustrated in a way is they ask me like, they're asking me like, why do you want to make such a film? This is nothing to do with us. This is nothing to do with our generations. This is what our grandparents has done. Now you are trying to reveal all this dark history, all these bad things. What do you want us to know? And I realized my film could not end there. This is why I developed the second half. So instead of just digging out all this dark history, we also have to tell the younger generation how we can think critically from it, how we can learn from it. And this is what I'm trying to do in the second half. This is why the whole film extends from 2.5 hours to 5 hours to cover it.
How do you think our individual perception of history is reflected by how it's remembered by society or by different countries?
Well, I do think Taiwan as a society as a whole, we can do, there's still a lot of space and a lot more we can do about that. I mean, to think about how do we involve in this war. I mean, it's our duties as a younger Taiwanese. It's not anymore we should bear the responsibility of the war crimes. It's grandparents' generation. But it's our duty as a younger Taiwanese, as a young Taiwanese today, it's our duties to how we can remember this World War II history. I mean, if we go out to Southeast Asia, are we going to tell those neighboring countries we simply do not remember it? Right. I don't think it's fair for those victims of the Southeast Asia.
So from hearing various narratives and digging through all these historical archives, did filming this change your outlook on history, and how so?
Well, if you're talking about my perspective, frankly speaking, in the beginning when I first learned about the Taiwanese soldiers involved in the massacre when in the Southeast Asia, and also because we come to 80 years after the war, and then for all the 80 years there has been just silence. No one talk about it, no one tell about it, like no one acknowledge they have been there involved in this. In the beginning, when I learned about all those materials, personally, I'm quite angry. I'm like quite frustrated. Why? I mean, as a society, you just denying all this happened. Yeah, but then I try to control my anger and rage in the film, as you can see, because I do hope this is a film that can dialogue with young people. So I do not want to appear as just an angry person, keep accusing the others. Instead, I want inviting the youngs, like, okay, we all know what this had happened, and we all know we have not thought about this, but now we know about this. What else we can do? What else we can think about it?
Do you think the silence that people refrain from talking about the war is from this identity crisis people might experience in Taiwan, being a former colony of Japan and now governed by Republic of China in Taiwan?
Yeah, a very good question. Of course, this is related because with the context. I mean, after the World War II, Taiwans were handed from Japan Empire to 中华民国 government. Since then, then Taiwan is part of the 中华民国, and then we see themselves instead of part of the Japan colonies during the war, they see themselves as a winning alliance. So the whole country, for over 40 years during the White Terror time, the whole country national narrative is they win the war. They are anti-Japan, they are Kuomintang, they work with US, then they win the war. And all those individuals' memories of Taiwanese soldiers or Taiwanese civilians, they are suppressed and oppressed. They do not have a chance or space to come out and tell their memories. I always see there is a conflicting situation between individuals' memories with the national narrative. We can see like over the White Terrors, over the 40 years, all those individuals' memories were suppressed. They are silenced by the national narrative. And then national as a country, they always trying to build their own national narrative.
The documentary grapples a lot with the issue of identities and wartime dilemmas. What are some examples from the people you interviewed?
Of course, there are very conflict and different identity during that time. Even at that time, the young Taiwanese, they are very eagerly sign up for to be the Japan Army soldiers. But what they are thinking is mostly about how about their own living. It's not like they're trying to be just loyal to the Japan. The more important thing is for them is you get high pay. You get stable salary. Yeah. And then for the lower class of the society, they simply see it as a solution for their tomorrow meals. So they see it's more a personal reason why they join the armies, because they see it as a way to earn money by working overseas. Sometimes I do believe we sometimes exaggerate the identity crisis. That's why you can see once the war ends, their mindset is like they cry for the Japan Empire, but straight away they are thinking of how to survive then another day. If there is a chance they have to work for the alliance, they will work for the alliance. Because for them, it's just being survived is the most important thing for them.
Do you think that kind of identity dilemma is more obvious in, let's say, the descendants of those who have participated in the war?
I think identity crisis is more a modern question. Only when we go through the modern education, we were taught, like from primary school, we have to be loyal to the country, we have to be loyal to a certain royal family. This is our modern people living, not for people living during that age. Their mindset is more about how to survive for another days.
A bit more about your personal experience. Can you share a bit more about your experience as a Malaysian director based in Taiwan and going about this history?
Actually, I'm now Taiwanese. I immigrated to Taiwan. I do have a Taiwanese wife, and I have like how I start in the films is really my main purpose. I'm trying to talk to the young people, like how I start the film. I talk to my young child. He would know one day I came from Malaysia, and then we decide to stay in Taiwan. But then we shouldn't shy away from knowing this part of that history. Although some part of him came from Malaysia, some part of him came from Taiwan. To know this history, this whole history better, helping him as a better human being. And we shouldn't try to shy away from this burden.
Thank you for joining us today. It's great to hear your insights about the documentary.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. You can find more stories from TaiwanPlus News by following us on social media. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.